This is part 1 of an 18-part series on the Tiger tank-equipped Heavy Panzer Battalion in World War II. The Tiger tank came into prominence not in the years of Blitzkrieg, but the years of defeat and retreat. From 1943 onward, the German infantrymen and panzermen fought in two different worlds. A common saying in wartime reports of German armored forces in the second half of World War II was that we, the panzer troops, were the cliff in the ocean. This cliff, so to speak, was the Tiger tanks, Panther tanks, Panzer IVs, Stug 3 assault guns, and other armored fighting vehicles forming the backbone of the Eastern Front. Even before the Battle of Kursk, the once legendary German infantryman had already lost his fighting power after over 3 million casualties at the front by June 1943. Despite sending millions of reinforcements, the Eastern Front was fundamentally a terrifying black hole of destruction for the German people. The situation would get worse and worse after Kursk, with over 4.4 million German casualties by May 1944, and skyrocketing human and material losses in the final year of the war. With the heavily reduced German infantry units struggling to hold overextended front lines, the struggle for survival was down to the tanks and the artillery. The average German division at the time was just a division in name only, with frontline infantry regiments the size of battalions and battalions the size of companies, platoons the size of squads. The defensive power of the Germans was now heavily based around German corps and divisional artillery, screened by thin groups of overstretched infantry and armor fighting for their lives. The German armored fighting vehicles and the decimated infantry units were now desperately fighting a sea of enemy forces on all fronts that massively outnumbered them in both men and material. The situation on the Eastern Front was extremely depressing for the decimated German infantry units that fought with a courage born of desperation. They knew that they were condemned men with a dark future. Compared to the Western Allies, the German soldiers in the East were terrified of becoming prisoners of war of the Soviets. A common saying of this era was, "Enjoy the war while you can, peace will be terrible." The German soldier and their people were now on the wrong side of history and would suffer a terrible retribution for all the horrors they inflicted on others. Many German soldiers chose to go down like warriors, fighting only for personal glory, medals, and fulfilling their duty of comradeship to their brothers in arms. The Iron Cross, the Tank Destruction Badge, and the Close Combat Clasp were handed out en masse. Veterans talk about how needless the endless defensive and counteroffensive combat became in this lost war. The men were just fighting for the sake of fighting. The phenomenon of the itchy neck appeared among German officers, which was a desire for the ultimately meaningless Knight's Cross. In Blood Red Snow, the memoirs of a German soldier on the Eastern Front, machine gunner Gunther of the 24th Panzer Division called the phenomenon the Knight's Cross to the Wooden Cross. There was no tomorrow for the German frontline fighter. Some German officers even chose judgment by fire. They exposed themselves to the enemy to wash away the shame of defeat. With morale down and every sane German soldier knowing that they were losing the war, the importance of the wonder weapons increased. The most significant of these highly propagandized weapons was the Tiger tank. The propaganda and morale value of the Tiger tank far exceeded its actual combat value. The very presence of Tigers on the front line inspired the hopeless infantrymen to hold out against vastly superior forces. Among the high performers of the German army was Germany's top Tiger tank commander Otto Carius. He was credited with defeating 150 enemy tanks in over 100 armored combat actions. Carius was remarkably not even a professional soldier. He was a wartime soldier that enlisted in 1940 and saw his first combat during Operation Barbarossa as a crewman aboard the thinly armored Panzer 38T in the 20th Panzer Division. After 1 year of combat, Carius was sent to officer training school and was commissioned a lieutenant. With his promotion, he was assigned to Heavy Tank Battalion 502, equipped with some of the first Tiger tanks in April 1943. They were sent to fight in the Stalingrad front. Over the next 14 months, his unit fought mostly defensive actions, ultimately withdrawing to Narva for the defense of Estonia, where Carius would be decorated with a Knight's Cross. His citation states, "During the time period March 17 to March 22, 1944, Lieutenant Carius led 3 Tiger tanks in a series of engagements with Soviet armor near the village of Lembitu, west of Narva. Within 3 days, he and his 3 Tigers destroyed 28 tanks, 4 assault guns, and 17 artillery pieces." Carius would be awarded the Knight's Cross for this success. This was Otto Carius' greatest military achievement in World War II and plays a central role in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud. It is also the subject of Miyazaki's comic about the same battle, titled Tigers Covered in Mud. After months of positional warfare west of Narva, Carius and his Tigers were transferred to fight in Latvia. It was here where he won the Oak Leaves to his Knight's Cross. His official citation states, "On July 22, 1944, Lieutenant Carius led a bold attack into the village of Malinova, northeast of Duneberg, with only himself and his wingman, Albert Kershaw. He and his 2 Tigers charged into Malinova and engaged a force of 17 Soviet tanks positioned there. Of these, Carius destroyed 10, Kershaw 4, and the nearby force of Sturmgeschützen 3 more. Among this tally of destroyed armor were several IS-2 heavy tanks. By executing this bold operation, accomplished with no friendly losses, Lieutenant Carius prevented the continuation of the Soviet breakthrough toward Duneberg and thereby enabled a friendly defensive front to be built." In August 1944, Carius was transferred to the Armor Center at Paderborn to assume command of a company of Heavy Tank Destroyer Battalion 5012. This unit, equipped with the heaviest armored fighting vehicle ever to see combat in World War II, the Jagdtiger tank destroyer, was deployed in defensive operations along the Rhine in March and April 1945, before it surrendered to the U.S. Army. During his wartime service, besides the Knight's Cross with the Oak Leaves, Otto Carius was awarded the Wound Badge in Gold for being injured more than 5 times in World War II. He was also awarded the Armored Combat Badge in Silver for fighting in over 100 tank battles. After World War II, he owned and ran a pharmacy until his retirement. He passed away in 2015. Otto Carius' memoir, written in the 1950s, provides his view on the Tiger tank. These views are similar to what other Tiger veterans have said and also reappear in primary sources during the war. This includes wartime news sheets for Tiger tank tactics and wartime documents. The Tiger Tank Battalion possessed 45 Tiger tanks at full strength, with 3 Tiger tanks in the battalion command group. A completely outfitted Tiger Tank Line Company had 14 tanks. A full-strength line platoon had 4 Tigers. According to Carius, the Tiger tank drove like a passenger car with a powered steering wheel. This was unlike the notorious T-34, which was more difficult and energy-intensive to drive. The Tiger tank could easily steer 60 tons and drive a maximum of 45 kilometers per hour on roads and 20 kilometers an hour cross-country. In actual operations, the Tiger crews limited their speeds to 20 to 25 kilometers an hour on roads and slower while traveling cross-country. The Tiger tank driver had to be thoughtful and skillful to prevent mechanical breakdown or combat loss. He needed an instinctive feel for the terrain and to move properly cross-country. He also kept the heavily armored front of the Tiger facing the enemy at all times, without waiting for the tank commander to give an order. With a great driver, the Tiger tank commander could then concentrate completely on the enemy and commanding his Tiger tanks instead of worrying about the terrain. The gunner controlled the turret. At its fastest, the Tiger's 88mm cannon could rotate 360 degrees in 60 seconds. The quality of the platform was so good that extreme accuracy was ensured even at 3,000 meters. According to Carius, the most common enemy of the Tiger tanks of the 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion was the T-34 equipped with 76mm cannons. The T-34 was dangerous to the Tigers from 600 meters in the front 1,500 meters in the sides and as far as 1,800 meters from the rear. According to wartime documents, the German panzer troops' tactical guidance was for Tiger tanks to maintain a minimum distance of 1,000 to 2,000 meters away from the enemy. At 2,000 to 1,500 meters distance, which was over 1 mile, the Tiger tanks could knock out a T-34 with 1 to 3 88mm cannon rounds. At the same time, the Tiger tank is protected from the front and from the sides. Carius' view is similar. He believed that the Tiger tank's frontal armor could defeat enemy cannon rounds, but they couldn't afford getting hit in the sides, rear, and top of the tank. According to him, the IS-2 heavy tank encountered in 1944 was considered a peer opponent of the Tiger. It was superior in a sloped armor layout but had a low rate of fire and 3 times smaller ammunition storage capacity, which was a major disadvantage in firefights. Carius' tactical guidelines was to open fire first, but if you can't do that, at least hit first. He believed that this is where the German panzers had the edge over the Red Army on the Eastern Front. The training and the quick and accurate gunnery systems on the Tiger tanks allowed them to open fire first and hit first more often than not against the Soviets. For most of World War II, the Red Army only used 4-man crews. By the time they upgraded to the 5-man crews, it was already too late. With the 4-man crew, the Soviet tank commander also doubled as a tank gunner. He had to observe, command, aim, and fire the main cannon at the same time. Soviet tank commanders were overburdened in tank-to-tank combat, where seconds mattered, and his reaction speed was always inferior to the Germans, who subdivided these tasks with 2 different crew members. In many ways, the T-34 was superior to the German tanks, but the Soviet disadvantage in effective rate of fire and accuracy was their Achilles heel. This negated their superiority in armor, weapons, speed, and maneuverability in tank duels. Carius believed that the second most important guideline was having observant and decisively acting Tiger tank commanders who weren't afraid of engaging vastly superior enemy formations. They must not rely on small vision blocks in their button-up command cupola, but expose their heads for observation. Tank commanders must be willing to risk their lives in order to be combat effective. Everything depends on instant recognition of enemy targets. Seconds make the difference between victory or defeat. Enemy sharpshooters and anti-tank riflemen had a clear preference at opening fire at German panzer hatches. Many Tiger commanders perished due to exposing their heads in action. But the alternative of moving with closed hatches was even more dangerous. When the situation got hot, Carius used a folding artillery scope to peek outside of his hatch. In contrast, the lack of good observation by the Red Army's armored force often resulted in tactical defeats of entire units. Soviet tank commanders were trained by regulations to launch attacks with their hatches closed, protecting the commander personally but endangering the entire crew due to blindness to enemy threats. This was compounded by their tactical doctrine. In the Soviet T-34 tank assault regulations of 1944, the Soviet tactics was to have a fixing and flanking group. The fixing group would engage the German panzers with stationary aim fire during short stops while advancing from cover to cover. The flanking armored maneuver element was to fire on the move while racing at the enemy at full speed. When this rapid flank attack was successful, they defeated the German panzer unit and threw them out of their positions. But if this tactic went wrong, as it did from time to time, the whole Soviet tank group could get ambushed and knocked out one by one. With tank-to-tank combat the only weak point of the Soviets, the Tiger tanks had the upper hand against their most common enemy, the T-34. According to both Tiger Ace Whitman and Carius, and also German wartime documents, panzer crews were actually more afraid of anti-tank guns than enemy armor. Enemy tanks and self-propelled guns were relatively big and visible targets compared to heavily camouflaged and concealed anti-tank batteries. The anti-tank batteries and belts were hard to spot and typically hit the Tiger tanks before the Tiger commanders could even spot them. The anti-tank guns were also very difficult to hit because they were so low to the ground and concealed. And typically, the Tiger tank units ran not into one, but an entire wall of anti-tank guns of multiple batteries. Their best practice was to keep cool and not panic, and quickly fire back and destroy as many of the enemy as possible. So ultimately, the destruction of one anti-tank gun counted twice as much to veteran tank crews. They were much more dangerous to Tiger tanks than enemy armor. Carius also admired the quality of steel on Tiger tanks. It was hard without being brittle. Despite its hardness, it was also elastic. If an anti-tank shell didn't penetrate the armor, it slid off and left behind a gorge. Despite the low operational readiness rate of the Tiger tank as a combat system, Carius believes that the maintenance and repair groups of the 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion tried their best and performed extremely well. Carius characterized their performance as self-sacrificing and beyond the call of duty. He believed that his Tiger tanks were supported by mechanics that had an inner conviction to keep the Tigers operational by all means available. They wanted to have the damaged vehicles rolling to the front as soon as possible. According to Carius, the logistics company of the Tiger Tank Battalion, who brought up critical supplies, rations, fuel, and ammunition to the front, was remarkable and unsung. Their job was frequently harder than those of men fighting from Tiger tanks. They had the mission of arriving in one piece and fighting the tanks directly in the front line. The logistics vehicles traveled at night, without lights on, and usually on unfamiliar routes, which were disrupted daily by fire. These logistics men always had to count on hostile surprises and get through the situation. According to Carius, the Tiger tanks of 2nd Company, 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion, was never left without resupply in World War II. Carius praises the recovery platoon of their maintenance company. With operational readiness rates hovering at only 35 to 45%, the Tiger tank was extremely prone to breaking down and falling out of even short road marches and combat action. The men, usually under enemy fire, had to tow immobilized Tiger tanks at night with their 18-ton FAML prime movers. These Tigers, if they broke down in combat, had to be dragged out of the front line. Worse, it required multiple 18-ton prime movers to extract one 57-ton Tiger tank. It required a lot of experience and iron nerves to pull off. Despite the maximum performance of the Tiger tank support units, whenever the Soviets were in rapid pursuit and hot on their heels, the valuable Tiger tanks were frequently lost. According to Tiger tank statistics, more Tiger tanks were lost abandoned in retreats than by enemy fire in World War II. For additional information, see the memoirs Tigers in the Mud, The Combat Career of Otto Carius. It is a must-read on the psychology of a Tiger commander and includes his wartime after-action reports. Most of Carius' observations are similar to those of other Tiger tank commanders during the war. My 18-part series on the Tiger tank-equipped Heavy Panzer Battalion in World War II is the longest and most detailed content on the Tiger tank in action on this entire platform. Parts 1 through 5 are about the battles of Tiger Tank Ace Otto Carius and Hayao Miyazaki's artwork on his combat experiences. Parts 6 through 13 is a complete breakdown and reveal of how a Tiger Tank battalion fights and works from the inside. Parts 14 to 18 is a critique on the Tiger Tank's combat value in World War II. After this series, I will post a 17-part series on the Battle of Kursk. Parts 1 through 9 of the second series covers the combined arms attack of the German 9th Army in the Battle of Kursk. Parts 10 to 14 will cover the air campaign and all of the wonder weapons used in the operation, including Ferdinand tank destroyers, remote-controlled demolitions, and self-propelled artillery. Parts 15 to 17 will be about the aftermath of the Battle of Kursk and its final impact on the German army. My series on the Red Army will be paused for now and will continue at a later date. This will be on the training, organization, and combat tactics of the Combined Arms Infantry Army and Tank Army on the Eastern Front in World War II. Thanks so much for watching. Please help out this channel by liking, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. And check out my Substack and my playlist. Comment below on what you think about the Tiger tank in action in World War II.